So I think maybe we'll get going. I don't see anybody rushing to get in here. So, welcome. We're doing SOLIDWORKS XDesign today. Really, I'll just be calling it XDesign from here on out because we're kind of separating that. They're making it pretty clear this week that we've got SOLIDWORKS and then we've got the X family of apps and we've got everything going 3D experience. So that's the way it's going to be going. Who am I? Who's the guy blabbering up here? So my name's Dave Antonavage. I am a mechanical engineer down in Long Island, or I guess up in Long Island from here. I work for ULC Robotics, and we do basically problem fixing for the utilities. So you got something going crazy in a gas main, in a big LP tank under the Hudson River, you call us, we make it, we solve it. We make a robot, we design everything, we create everything, we train the technicians, we build the trucks, we make the pressure vessels, we do it all. We're a complete package, service, everything for R&D in the utilities. We used to be a contractor for all the big guys like National Grid, Con Edison, all of them, but now we basically specifically focus on R&D tech. The robotics is one division that we do. We also have a UAV division, so I think, if I go to my background, I got my sweet visualized rendering here of one of our UAVs. That's about 6 foot wingspan. It's real. We've got 2 of them right now, and they will do what you see there. They'll fly over transmission lines and use LiDAR to scan everything to do inspections. So thermal, imaging, you name it, we're doing all the crazy stuff. On top of that, I am also, this thing, it just doesn't sound like, yeah, I'm getting played by this microphone a little bit. I'm also a SOLIDWORKS user group leader. So who in here is part of a SOLIDWORKS user group? That's not enough hands. You guys got to change that after this week, okay? So here, I'm going to switch over for a minute. All right, that's a little better. So SOLIDWORKS user groups, what are they? They are your local connection to the people who know everything about SOLIDWORKS, basically. They're your trainers, they're your networkers, they're your access to the VAR when they're not answering your calls, they're your access to SOLIDWORKS corporate when you have a specific problem that you can't get figured out. They're everything, all in one. Usually somebody like me will volunteer to run a local chapter. They'll have quarterly meetings. Usually you get a nice buffet dinner, or the traditional dinner of choice is pizza, but I usually go for Italian or barbecue because I worked in a pizzeria, and to hell with that. But we get professionals to come in, guys like me, students, college educators, basically the whole gambit of SOLIDWORKS users will come in and they'll either show what they're working on or they'll walk you through something. Oh, I want to learn sheet metal tonight, I want to learn simulation tonight, I want to do weldments, I want to do XDesign, I want to do whatever it is out there. You talk to your local leader, they'll find the people, get them in the meeting for you, and it's free. It's awesome. Free scares everybody, but go. They're really good. Rachel York's awesome. She's in charge of the user groups now. Connect with her. You'll see her around in her cowboy boots and a crap load of flair. So yeah, get involved. On top of that, I also do SOLIDWORKS training for LinkedIn Learning. Have any of you guys heard of LinkedIn Learning at all before? Okay, some of you have. Cool. Used to be lynda.com, so they bought them out a couple of years ago, and they're slowly transitioning the whole website over to the LinkedIn Learning platform. It's basically just video tutorials, so a lot like what the other companies out there are doing in the past. We've had people like Solid Professor, I Get It, other companies like that. Check my courses out. I think they're pretty good. You might too. If not, let me know so I can make them better. Why am I here? Why am I the guy to talk about XDesign? So last year at SOLIDWORKS World, if any of you guys and girls were there, we had a XDesign challenge. So there were 10 of us who submitted designs, and I was one of the winners with a couple other awesome guys who had some sweet designs. My favorite one is this one up in the top right here. So the guy made like a whole infomercial pamphlet for it as well. It's a cell phone crusher for your kids. He's like, when they're glued to it, just insert here, it takes care of all your problems. And he made it. He actually fabricated the whole thing and brought it, handed it to GP, and we all just started screaming, no, don't touch it, because it's just covered in razor sharp edges and just meant to mangle things. But it was pretty cool. All these things here made in SolidWorks XDesign, and they basically gave us no training in a couple weeks and said, make what you can make, send it in, and we're gonna pick the best one. So I did a wheelchair with some airless tires for urban and outdoor environments. We had spice racks, a VTOL collapsible walker, organizer. I think the one in the middle is actually some kind of power station. It's like a water power station. So they're pretty crazy designs. And this was when we started the conversation. I asked a couple of guys, how was the software? If you thought you were having problems, oh man, we were hitting F5 like every other minute. It was a struggle, but we got through it, and because of the stuff that we did, they learned a lot about the software and figured out what they had to do in the future. After that, we had another design competition that landed me and these four gentlemen a trip to Milan last year for Design Week. So we went over and participated in a hackathon with Dassault Systems. We basically got about 12 hours to create a concept from scratch, model everything, 3D print part of it, and then present it at the conference. So it was a lot of fun. We basically came up with this device here that was meant to sort food, like on an assembly line, you want to sort apples or pears or whatever. This robot would do it. So here's a little stop action of the fun. They literally just locked us in a room and they're like, have at it. You're going. But software got a little bit more stable by then. We had all the product development people in the room, and they could turn on and off all the options as we needed them. It's like, oh, we need this feature. Oh, we got that. We just didn't know you were ready for it. So fast forward, we're here today. We've got the current release of XDesign, which I have to say is much, 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 much more stable than it used to be. If anybody did any of the alpha sessions on Saturday or Sunday, I sat down with the recent release of XDesign, and I don't think it crashed once. And we were doing all kinds of new features and new functions that aren't even in it yet, and it was very, very stable. So they're heading in the right direction, but you got to remember, it's a very, very young software. And we're talking brand new, all right? So you're going to have complaints. There's going to be things you don't like about it. I have my list of things. What you want to do is take that information and get it to SolidWorks. They need to know what's lacking in the software so that they can finish it. There's guys like Divi La Jolla, who's part of the definition team, Sal Lama, if any of you guys know them. They're the guys to contact. They're working on this project as we speak, and they need your input. It's like SolidWorks, this is built with customer input. All of the software that Dassault makes comes with customer input. They're not just going, let's make this because we want to do this function. They make a function because somebody asked for it. So ask for it. Yes, you can, and we'll talk about that. I'm gonna try to switch back. Does this sound like garbage? Up here it sounds terrible. You guys sound fine? Okay, it's throwing me off like something. Whoa, I hate doing the microphone because I always just present loud. As you can tell, I can fill the space. Okay, so let's talk about the big differences between XDesign and SolidWorks. So SolidWorks, we all know from our installs, we go online, we download 8, 12 gigs of information, start up the installation manager, and slog it out for a couple hours, get it all installed, do all that stuff. XDesign is cloud-based. You join the Lighthouse program, you get a 3D passport, you sign up, it's all there, you're done, you've got access. So that's the number one thing for CAD admins out there. That's huge. You just went from maybe a week, a year of updates and installations and service packs and all this stuff to it's always up to date. And everyone's always up to date on the same version. So that's pretty awesome. You can collaborate in real time. I'm using air quotes here. You can actually have two people work on what we would consider traditionally the same part at the same time. I'm putting fillets on this thing over here while he's adjusting the hole pattern, and he's doing a sweep to add on something else, and we can all do it at the same time. There's just a priority in it, so whoever gets there first with their feature, that's when it pushes in, but then it'll actually update in real time and flag it and say, hey, this file, Johnny just did an update to the part, just hit refresh and you'll see it right in your screen. So that's pretty wild. When we were doing the hackathon, we had like 4 of us working on one part at one time because it was kind of complex. So that's a great advantage. Typically, if you want to do stuff like that, you work in PDM, right? You check in, you check out, or you have some kind of vault system, and that's how you manage collaborating with people, but that's kind of slow, right? You got to wait for those processes to happen. This is just all at the same time, yeah.
If you're in a sketch, so someone creates a feature,
Mm-hmm.
and you're in a sketch in the middle of that, and you have to refresh so you get those updates, like does it still maintain whatever you were doing, or is it lost?
No, from what I understand, it tries to maintain everything. It shouldn't lose anything unless there's like a loss of internet in the middle of it. Like if you get disconnected from the server in the middle of that process for some reason or another, which can happen, then you may lose the feature. Right. Yeah, no, normally, no, you shouldn't lose anything. Like I'm doing a sketch on the front face and he's adding fillets and doing all that. It's fine. You just keep working, keep going. It's all in there. Once you finish your feature, it'll flag that, oh, there's an update. It'll add his feature, keep your feature as well. It'll just, depending on who did what first, that'll depict the order of the design manager. So this is the next thing we should talk about, the file structure, right? We're all used to SolidWorks. We have parts, we have assemblies, we have drawings. We don't really have drawings yet in XDesign. It's coming, they're working on it. But we don't have files either. We have a database, and that's where everything exists. So you don't have a part file or an assembly file or routing assemblies or weldments or all this stuff we had before. You just have a space, and everything exists in that space. And if you created something before, you can pull that in and drop it in and treat it as an assembly like we typically could, but it's not. And I'll show you guys. We're going to kind of do a couple slides at a time, jump into XDesign, do a couple slides, go back and forth so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Like I was mentioning, it's always refreshing and backing up. So you have the option to make multiple versions, like you would in a PDM system. Give yourself those checkpoints along the way in your design. You know, you're doing some concept. I'm gonna make this orange, and then I'm gonna extend this, and then do that. You can log all of that just like you would in PDM. You just have to tell it to do so. Otherwise, it's just constantly saving and giving you the most recent update. If you're trying to update in SolidWorks or do backups in SolidWorks, it's like a 13-step process, and nobody really agrees on what the best thing is. So it's just a struggle. You end up living with like a hard drive. I heard an anecdote about a guy who keeps a hard drive in his lunchbox. So, that's the thing. Age. So like I mentioned, this is a brand new. Okay, they just released the Lighthouse last year, where it went from like a dozen people to a couple hundred people. It's on the order of a few thousand people now. They're still limiting who gets access to the software when, just because it's a small team managing it. But just go to mysolidworks.com if you're interested. There's a little button up in the corner about trying XDesign. Send it in. Basically, when they have the bandwidth, they're going to add you on. So it's going to be just continue as a gradual rollout, but give them a good excuse. Tell them you're working on robots or something, and they'll get you signed up. So what do we need to operate in XDesign? So you need to create a 3D passport login, which is how you access the 3D experience platform. So obviously we all saw the announcement on Monday that we're moving to the 3D experience world, right? Everything is moving to this platform. They've been talking about it for years. Dassault's been doing it for a long time, putting a lot of investment into it. This is kind of our first crack at a serious push to get SolidWorks users onto the platform. Personally, I was very resistant for years about the platform, but once you get in it and start messing around, it's pretty awesome. It's really nice when you don't have to worry constantly about, oh, my video card just crashed, or oh, Johnny just did something in the server room and now we got the leak and all this, and losing files and backups and who's got the backup. I have a bunch of guys who really like to do final, part names and all that kind of garbage, and it's just, you don't do that anymore. It's all right there. You don't really even have to think about it. It's just backing it all up, and you can keep it private and just locked in for yourself, or you can have public designs that are out there and collaborate with everybody you want. So the big thing is we start with the dashboard. That's our interface. It's basically the web browser. You've probably seen it 30 times by now. It looks like this, pretty boring. It's just a blue band But the big thing is this little icon. Oh, you can't see my mouse. This little icon up here. This is how we activate everything. I forget what they call it. The compass, I believe, the 3D compass. When I get into XDesign, look at that. But basically, there's a section for all your collaborative stuff, your communication. There's an area for all the 3D apps. And then there's 2 other areas you don't care about now. But that's what you got to know. There's a search inside of it, so kind of like you would with PDM or other softwares, you can search all of your files, the whole database, the people that you're collaborating with for files and stuff a lot quicker than you could before. It's just basically Google. They've talked a lot about the 3D drive in the presentations the past few days. So the 3D drive is basically Dropbox for the 3D experience platform. In XDesign, we use the 3D space. This is different. This is a database, and that's where all of our files exist for the XDesign stuff. So all of your information you put up there, if it's other documents, like you loaded up some PDFs, you put some Microsoft notes up on there, you've got some images guys are going off of to do their designs. All your parts, assemblies, however you categorize them, they're all there in the collaborative space. And like you can imagine, there's all kinds of permissions and rules that go into it as an administrator, and you can filter who sees what and how and when, revision control, all that stuff. So it's all kind of built into there in one spot. Then there's the app itself, the XDesign app, which lives in the 3D app section of the platform. And then the user assistant panel, which basically acts as like our super help file for everything. They know this is really new. They've spent a lot of time documenting as much as they can. They've actually put in walkthroughs that you can do to walk through a lot of the features. So there's tons of stuff out there. If and when you get access, I suggest that you look through it at least to see what all the topics are, so you know what functionality you have right now. Big things, you don't have full functionality of SOLIDWORks, right? So I've heard a lot of people talking about, oh man, this is going to be, they're trying to replace SOLIDWORks and blah. It's not really what's going on here. What they're trying to do is get more people involved. All of us drank the Kool-Aid. We use SOLIDWORks. Our company used SOLIDWORks. That's not going to change anytime soon because we all do that. Nobody's changing to Pro-E or going to Inventor because they just feel like it. If you've ever had to do any kind of translations like that, you may as well quit your job and just go somewhere else because it's terrible. But they want to get everybody else. There's a lot of people out there that want access to 3D CAD platforms that don't have it right now, and they're not mechanical industrial designers. They don't understand what weldment means. They don't know what routing is. Like, this is all just foreign to them. So they're trying to get a space that we can work with all of these other people, students. I mean, they just did a huge competition for the first robotics kids doing a lunar lander. Did anybody see it on the SOLIDWORks blog? No? Come on, guys, go to the SOLIDWORks blog. It's right there. There's cool stuff on there. But yeah, I mean, nationally, they had something like 40 teams, and all these kids jumped on with no training, and I'm telling you, the designs they came up with were extremely impressive. I mean, just the way that they were able to complete the design in a very short amount of time and then make like these nice-looking rendering-ish images was awesome. And we're talking, first robotics teams. These are high school kids, junior high kids, and it was great. This is what just to back up, so we talked about the dashboard right here. When you load up the dashboard, you basically have different widgets that go on the screen. So you're going to have the XDesign app, which is going to live as a widget on it, and then you also have the 3D space. This is what your 3D spaces look like. So on the left, you'll kind of have a tree that has everything separated by project. So you make collaborative spaces is what they're called, and inside of those you keep all of your data. And then you can invite other people to your collaborative space, kick them out, filter what they see, all that stuff, but that's how you maintain it. So collaborative space in a 3D space is where all your files exist. Does that make any sense? 'Cause I've said space like 15 times. Okay. Cool. Very cool. Okay. And then the app, obviously the app. So to get the app when we're in the dashboard, you basically click on the 3D icon and you go down and you'll see a couple of 3D apps down on the bottom. The ones that you'll care about in the short term are going to be obviously the XDesign app, but also 3D Play. So once you make all of your designs or you start your designs in XDesign, you can use the 3D Play app to preview them and then do some stuff with making funky marketing images and things like that. For the hackathon, we used it to make like some render quality images to use in the presentation. It's not a rendering software, it's just got like a bunch of buttons that you can click real quick and make it look kind of pretty. Assign some colors, assign like some backgrounds, things like that. It's all kind of rudimentary now. But I think the coolest thing about that is that it has an automatic exploded view tool where you can basically just scroll a slider and it will bring it in and out and just do it all for you without you having to go through all the steps of saying, okay, move this shaft 5 inches and then move this bushing 6 inches above that, and then I want to do this. No, you don't do anything. You just slide a bar, and then you've got various exploded views at various levels. So it's pretty cool. And I mentioned the user assistant panel. That's your help file. So you're going to use that for all of your help topics. I've gone through this thing myself pretty thoroughly, and it has just about everything that's in here. I don't think there's something in the software that doesn't exist in this help file. So when you do get access, use the help file. Like they have walkthroughs that will pop up on your screen, and just like you do the SolidWorks tutorials, you can step by step through, and they have little GIF images in there that show you what it should look like on your screen. So they're pretty good. So that said, let's take a look at XDesign so we can actually see what it looks like. So all I've done at this point is I logged in to the 3D Experience platform. This is what my dashboard looks like. So when you create your first dashboard, it's up to you what it looks like. You can basically, if I want little XDesign over here, and I want 3D space over here, and then, I can go over here, and let's grab 3D Play, and we'll drop that in the middle of it, and do all this stuff. I mean, you can kind of customize this to whatever you want. It's really flexible. The intention is that you have what you want on the screen at any given point, the way that you want to view it. So I'm just going to maximize XDesign for a second. So looking back up at the compass, this is where you start to drop all those things on the screen. So for example, I'm going to make a new dashboard really quick. I'm just going to go up to the top. So you can see I've done this a couple times. I'm going to add a new dashboard. It'll be completely empty. I'm going to call it XDesign 100 because I feel like I've done this 100 times. And it's going to take a sec, load up. Oh, and I should have prefaced, I'm doing this all live on the internet in a basement. Something's going to go wrong. Just bear with me, please. New software. Here, we'll go to this one. We'll go to new dashboard. This is probably empty. Okay, new dashboard. So this is what it looks like. It's completely empty, right? You don't see XDesign. You don't see any other drop downs. There's nothing. So you start by going up to the compass, and I'm just going to click on 3D modeling apps. When you hover over any of these, it tells you what they're for. So up at the top is the social and collaboration one. I think this is the information and data one. And then if you're doing any virtual reality, crazy intense stuff, you go down here. But mostly you're going to be dealing with the 3D app or going up here to the collaboration section to pull up 3D Swim. So if there's a third part, if you will, to this, there's the 3D spaces where all of our data exists. There's the XDesign app where we're manipulating all the data. And then there's 3D Swim, which is our community to share all the data. It's a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. The fun part is it's all just connected on here, so you don't really have to worry about it. If you're missing anything, you just go grab it. You go to the other link, you go to the other section. And this system is set up so that if you have anybody sharing stuff with you, you get little notifications over here, and it's going to tell you what's going on. You can see up in the top right, too, there's a little icon for has everybody heard of 3D Swim? Does anybody know what that is? Okay, a few of you. 3D Swim is like, it's like a Facebook feed for this platform. So, for example, if I go back to, let's go to my dashboard. Let's go to a good dashboard. XDesign. We'll close this. So I can just show you what it looks like real quick. All right, so this is what 3D Swim looks like. And don't pay attention to these numbers that I'm picking. This just has to do with releases and stuff like that. So when we were doing the competition, we used 3D Swim to just put some fun stuff up there and share some like videos and stuff between the few of us. So here's my buddy Kevin working on some parts. We typed some notes. Old guy in action, said Thomas. You know, everybody just doing their thing, and it's just kind of a stream of what's going on. If anybody uses like Slack or any programs like that, very similar. The nice thing is with this is you can attach all of your XDesign files to it. So like right here, instead of a picture, I could have an XDesign preview, and somebody could click on that and then pull up the whole model kind of live. Yes?
Is there a way to sort of filter this data? Like, do you have like different projects?
Yes. Yeah. There are what's called different swim communities. So there's like a public community where everybody's just dumping garbage on there, and then you can make your own community, or like for your company, for example. You can have the ABC company community. It's private to you guys, and you can decide how the information moves on it. Does that make sense? Okay. But we don't really care about that. We care about XDesign. That's why we're here. But you should just know about it. Another part of this dashboard is you can add tabs. So let's say like you really want to just have XDesign full on in the front, and I'm going to go ahead and hit F5. F5 is your best friend for this. You're going to be refreshing a lot. Like you notice how XDesign wasn't there for a second. Got to refresh. So again, it's new software. Sometimes it loses. I'm also, again, working on a Surface Pro 3 in a basement, trying to use the internet. So we'll see how it goes. But if you want to say, for example, keep all of your community stuff on a separate tab, you can do it like this. So I've got my XDesign on one tab. I've got all of my community information on another tab. And then I've got my 3D Play preview window on another tab yet. And then I've got another spot where I've put all of my files, and I've got my 3D drive on one side that handles my traditional files, and then on the other side I've got my 3D space, which handles all of my collaborative stuff. You will see in the 3D drive sometimes some of the stuff that you did in the space. It tries to give you in the 3D drive access to everything. You just have to be aware that sometimes it's not a file. Like if it's an XDesign part in your 3D drive because you shared it with SolidWorks, for example, now you're working with a real file and it goes back and forth. It's a little confusing, I'm not gonna lie. But for the most part, it's all just backed up here online. And as long as you're, naming new parts and making new parts, it's not a big deal. So we talked about the dashboard, the feature tree. So the feature tree in XDesign is now the design manager. So you'll see here that, it's kind of typical to what we had before. You got your planes and your origin. For the future releases, you're not going to see those. Those are going to go down to a different part of the tree. So don't freak out if you guys, join the thing in another month and then, where did there's just going to be a subcategory for the origins and all that stuff so they can separate stuff out easier. But as you look down the tree, it's pretty typical to what we're used to seeing, right? We see all the features, we see in an order. We can guess that, there's a line over here. That's probably our rollback bar. So we can go ahead and roll back to different points, delete features out. You can rename them, whatever you want, just like we would in SolidWorks, right? So that's pretty typical. The big thing that is different about this is everything starts as a physical product, and you see it's kind of got this assembly symbol. Everything is this. So, for example, I can take this part now, grab a part from over here in my 3D space, and just drag it in here, and it's going to ask me, well, do you want to open that part, or do you want to insert that part? So I'm going to go ahead and insert the part. Hopefully it doesn't crash.
Can you bring IGES and stuff like that in?
Yes, you can bring in IGES step files. I don't know about Parasolid. I'm pretty sure it's got a Parasolid translator. All right, so there's that part that I dropped in here. It's just like a round cylinder. But if I look down my feature tree, it's kind of added in as its own item, and you can see all of the features that are inside of it like you would typically, but it doesn't separate it out as a different file in here. It treats it as though it's just another feature in the list, which is kind of like how you would do an insert part in SolidWorks, if I could compare it apples to oranges, but it does work differently in that, like if I want to edit this part, I've got to go sometimes back into it. It's just kind of weird. It's a new, different way. I haven't found a good way really to explain it yet, but really everything just exists in the feature tree, all in there, all one. No, you can't dissolve it. That's the thing. There's no dissolving it. It's just in there as it inserts it as a feature, like if you were doing a sketch or an extrusion or something like that. But then that feature, this file in here, if I edit it inside of this, doesn't necessarily push out to that part. It's part of this file now. I know that sounds weird. It is a little bit weird.
What happens if you edit it over on the right?
Then it'll push the update, but I've got to update the whole assembly. So it kind of works all ways, some ways. It all depends on how you set up your permissions too and things like that. But anyway, let me back up a second. Okay, so you'll notice as we go to the top, my mouse is not being awesome. No bodies, no surfaces, no nothing. It's just stuff in a tree. So it's very different. Like, when I first got on it, I wanted to hide this body, move that body, do all that stuff. You can still merge the bodies. It still treats them as bodies in Boolean. But you can't like go separate by a body. What you would do is probably insert it. Oh, come on. That's cute. So we're going to do another F5. Let's do another F5. What you could do is insert that feature as a part, basically. You do like I did, and that's how you would treat it as a body. So you'd have to do it individually like that. All right, so let's just check back what we missed real quick. All right, so we talked about the 3D space, how you get the app on there, and then the user help. So down on the bottom, these are where all your features are. We're used to having the command ribbon on the top. We've got it on the bottom now. If we go down to Tools, we've got the big question mark in the center. Click on that, brings up the User Assistant panel. You can go through all the help files here. And like I said, it'll give you videos and tutorials and all kinds of stuff for how to step through it. So that's where you find your help file. All of your toolbars are down here, like I said. So right now it says standard right here. I believe there's probably going to be a professional version like they do with everything else that'll come out at some version, a premium version that'll have more features, things like that, like simulation or whatever rolled into it. I'm just spitballing, but it seems like they're setting it up for that. I just want to talk about the toolbars real quick. I think we're at that point. Time we got there. Yeah. Okay. Any questions on that? I'm sure there are. It's kind of ridiculous.
Real quick, just about the workflow.
Yes.
So that wheelchair.
Yes.
If I was to make that, I would have made all these different parts and assembled them.
No, that's all. I just built it.
For that, you just built it.
I started in one end and just built it out.
Okay.
So like I think I started with the frame, then I made the seat, then I made one wheel.
And then you able to just copy the wheel or something?
Copied the wheel over, patterned the fins on the inside. Back then, those features like barely worked. So it took like 2 days just to copy the wheel over. Like I had to just keep going back to it. The servers were struggling, but if you do it now, it should be seamless, just seamless. I'm just sharing my experience because it's a young software. I mean, there's bugs in this thing, so you gotta kind of take it with a grain of salt when stuff's not going right, but know that it is saving everything in the background. So it's not going to be like SolidWorks where I just worked on this for 2 hours and it bombed and now I'm screwed. No, you maybe lost 30 seconds. As long as you got that internet connection, it's still going to be there. And when it brings it back up, it's going to try to resolve whatever feature you had started previously as well, because it'll have that in its memory. Any other questions? Okay. Yes. Yes. So this is the entire thing. Yeah, like this is a whole thing. I can't highlight part of it and say, give me an STL of just this. It's going to give me an STL of the whole thing. So I believe. Right.
an assembly space, you know, you'll bring it into a new physical product and do an assembly space, and then you can just go back and pull up those individual parts you want to print out, things like that. So like for that arm design we did, we printed out the fingers on the claw. So we had to make each finger individually, then drop it into the claw, and then drop everything else into one space after that. So I think it was like, I don't know, 12 parts or something like that, but it was made in like 3 workspaces, if that makes sense. So like we didn't separate everything out, we only made stuff discrete that had to be discrete. You can always push it out as a parasolid, or I think a step file, drop it into SOLIDWORKS and do the body stuff there if you wanted to. Not ideal, but that's why you got to kind of think about your workflow. So if you want something to be a discrete part, do it as a discrete part and then add it into, you know, an assembly file if you want. So it's tough because I don't want to say assembly or part because none of these are assemblies or parts, but that's the nomenclature we have to work with this. So you build an assembly, but it's basically a part file when you're done. It's just a database file, and it's all there in one spot. So this is all just one thing right now. I can't really separate it out. Yeah.
When you bring that back into SOLIDWORKS, you're working with
The whole thing,
the whole
as probably a dumb solid.
dumb solid, not like a multi-body part.
Unless I had parts floating in space. Like you can model part over here, part over here, part over here. Those are technically separate things. And when you bring them into SOLIDWORKS, it can't possibly recognize them as one body because they're disconnected, right? But XDesign doesn't recognize necessarily that they're not one thing. It's just one area in the database as far as XDesign is concerned. So it's a completely different structure, and it's weird. But it's good. Once you get into it, it's pretty cool.
I thought you could create features and then you can just highlight, like if you wanted to highlight the wheel and make it a part, I thought you could do that.
I might be mistaken, but were they able to do it yesterday? Okay, so
They selected a bunch of them, and then they like right-clicked, and you can actually, I think, create or like group it all into one.
okay, so
Then it becomes its own entity, I think, and you can say.
I think that's part of the new release. So I'm working off they have a this week release I was messing with over the weekend, which is like, it's really awesome. It's really fast. It's got a bunch more functions in it, stuff like that, like patterning and all of this. But I haven't had that yet. So it used to be when you click on these, and I think if I do that right now, if I hit just control and start grabbing, you can see I don't really have many options. All I can do is hide, show, or edit some of the features or delete. So they've got the new jam. But this keeps happening. This mouse doesn't like stuff. Anyway, all right. Let me just check how we're doing here on time. 5. Okay, we've got till 6. You guys are still with me? Nobody's asleep. I don't got to do my DJ horn. Bow, bow, bow. No, I was going to start with that, but I figured it'd be a little uncouth. So we'll move on. Okay, so we got XDesign reloading. Let's drop back into the PowerPoint just for a half a second. And you'll notice I just did another F5. I'm just refresh. When I get errors in this thing, I don't wait for them to solve themselves. I just hit F5, just refreshes the browser, and you're right back where you were in 2 seconds. This mouse doesn't love anything, though. All right. Wow, really? What's going on? Losing mouse functionality all of a sudden. This is fun.
Is touchscreen capable?
Yes, it is. And I believe that they're adding in the feature where you can just sketch just draw on it with the stylus, and it'll drop in the sketch features like they're doing in SOLIDWORKS 2019. So you'll have that. All right. Let's talk a little bit more about the GUI. So I'm going to drop back. Oh man, I'm having some nice issues. Okay. Server connection lost. Good times. Don't worry. When it gets to the harder stuff, I've got it all on video. We're just going to brute force through the GUI. So looking across the bottom, we have all these various toolbars. So you guys are going to recognize most of this stuff just from looking at it. We all know how sketches work. This is kind of that gesture tool that I was talking about. So you just draw on there and it drops it in. The thing that sucks right now is no splines. So it's all just arcs and straight lines. So like I tried testing it and making all kinds of funky shapes and stuff like that and ended up with like a square box. Yeah, exactly, for touch. So I assume it's going to be in here soon. I had a conversation with him over the weekend about it. I'm like, I want my spline. Give me a spline so I can do some nice airfoils and stuff like that. So it's coming. It's just going to take a little while. But all the typical stuff. So let's actually just, we'll start a new file. Click on new file down at the bottom. It asks you if you want to save, which doesn't really matter because it's saving anyway, but this is more of a so you feel good kind of thing. They literally told me that. They're like, people are just used to saving, so we added this in so they'd feel okay about saving it again one more time. All right, we're not saving. Okay, so moving on. I'm going to expand this one more time. So the first thing you do when you make a new part, it's going to ask you where you want to put it. I talked about the collaborative spaces, the 3D space. You've got to put this thing somewhere. You can't even start before you tell it where it needs to go because it needs to perpetually be saving it, right? So I'm just going to put this in my LinkedIn XDesign folder, creates a new component. There we go. So this is what I was talking about with the change. I just made a new part, and apparently I just got the new release. I think that's why I was having issues. It was updating my release. Now you can see that my X, Y, and Z axis and my origin are now in reference elements, and my planes are on the top. So that was the change I was talking about. Apparently they gifted me the release 10 minutes ago. That's why I was freezing. An email would have been nice. Anyway, so I thought they were going to be here too. They kind of shafted me. All my XDesign guys. So this is recorded, so they'll hear that. So anyway, so we go across the bottom. We've got all our typical sketch tools, right? So I can click on a plane, create new sketch. We all recognize these icons are the same ones in SolidWorks. Go in, just start sketching around, no big deal. What's kind of cool about this is it has all of like that shaded contour stuff built into it, but it also has these automatic constraint flyouts. So if I click on one line, you can see just the Flyout Toolbar automatically gives me a whole bunch of options. We don't have this in typical Sketch. This is like a thing that I really like. You know, when we're doing mates in our SolidWorks assemblies, we have those flyouts to do quick mates all the time. You just hold down Control, grab a bunch of surfaces, hit go, your mates fly together, your constraints fly together. This is nice because now you can do your constraining on the fly without having to rely on things like automatic relations. If you guys have ever worked in like big DXF files or DWG files with automatic relations, it's crazy. It gets very cumbersome. SolidWorks wants to crash, or you just don't get the relations you want. You start sketching and it makes shit concentric you don't want, the lines parallel to the wrong thing, whatever. I like this a little bit better because it just lets you dictate it off the bat. You also notice right over here on the left, it automatically put in a dimension as well. So I'm not going to another tool to put a dimension on it. It's giving me the option right here while this is grayed out. Do you want to assign a dimension to it? So all I've done is clicked on this thing. That's it. And I've got all of these options already. So I think that's pretty sweet. And it's the same with all of the other features as well. You see here that we've got the shaded contour. You can grab regions and move them around and stuff like that. Go a little bit slower. There we go. So you can see, just like you would in SolidWorks, right? Grabbing the contours. Moving over, points, dimensions, we know all about that. We do have a trim feature. It doesn't work the same way as the power trim always does. There are some situations where it behaves a little bit differently, but generally it's identical, you know, just trim. Doesn't have the go back option though, right? The go back and untrim my trim. So that's a little, but they're working on it. Offset, mirror, we know all about that, and then convert entities, right? So you're working in a different area. I always say steal everything you can. Just steal geometry, stop remaking it. Yes?
Are you saying there's no control key? No. In Power
I just did Control Z. Control Z. But what I mean is, so in Power Trim, if you guys might not have noticed this, when you go along, as you go through an entity, there's a little dot that forms right there. And if you while you're still holding down the mouse button, you back over the dot again, it brings that entity back. So we all do I trimmed 5 things I didn't want to trim on accident. Don't let go of the mouse button. You just drag back over those and it'll pop them back for you. You can kind of do a back and forth thing. But they don't have that here yet. I like that feature a lot because I'll be trimming stuff and kind of be like, is that right? And go back when I'm doing huge layouts and stuff like that. So that's our sketch tab. I'm going to move it along a little bit because we do have to get through a lot of stuff. Yep. No mouse gestures yet. But I was told they are working on mouse gestures. Actually, this release might have them. I'm not sure. But back in October, there was still not mouse gestures, but it's on the list. So that's the sketch. All right, features. We've got all of our typical features down here like we had before. We've got planes, we've got extrusions, cuts, sweeps, all that stuff. There's one big difference with this one. So I'm going to make an extrusion out of this sketch that I just did. So I'm just going to select that profile right there. If it'll let me select it, we'll rotate a little bit. So you can see I get the preview. You'll notice if you look right up here, we've got a lot of functions in one. So your extrude function in XDesign works as all of the extrusion type functions in one. So if you want to extrude a body, if you want to cut a body, if you want to extrude a surface, if you want to cut with a surface, if you want to do a thin body extrusion, they're all here in one feature. Okay, they don't have all of those features all blown out. All you have to do is click on the options. Now right now, cut and new are grayed out because I don't have anything created yet, but I can make a thin feature or I can just make a surface. They have surfaces in here just like you would in SolidWorks. It's got all the other options we're used to, mid-plane up to geometry, advanced options, merging, all that fun stuff. We still have bodies that merge together and all of that stuff. They're just not multi-body parts. So anyway, that's the highlight for extrusion. Most of these other features are all the same. The whole feature is a little bit different. Let me just back up real quick. We'll extrude this and put some holes in it. Oh, what's also cool is if I go in to edit this, I can still change it to a thin feature or a surface after the fact. So that's pretty sweet too. You change your mind. Like you can't do that in SolidWorks right now, and that's pretty baller. But I mean, this is basic stuff. We're talking about extrusions, right? So we can't get too hot to trot yet. Not too far. Hole wizard works a little bit different here. You basically have to, so in SolidWorks, you could go to the placement and then just touch on a surface and it would bring up a sketch and you could start locating it. With this, you got to have that geometry in there first. It needs the points first. I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's just how it is. So you'll notice when I say placement, I'm going to grab stuff, and you can see up here it's looking for sketches. So you need to have those points in there, but it works exactly like the whole feature that we have now. You can customize it, use all the standards. They've got everything built into here. Pretty basic, but you've got to have that sketch on the top and, you know, put a couple points in there. So we'll do just one right in the middle real quick. Great. Go back to the hole. Oh, and you can move this stuff everywhere. You can like customize this interface and just drag stuff wherever you want to. So whatever works for your workflow. I know I have some guys that operate SolidWorks and all their task panes are in like 3 monitors away. Like if that's what you're down with, you can do that with this. That's fine. You just got to have the browser be big enough to fall into all of those. You can collapse everything down, all that kind of fun stuff. Placement, so we're just going to select that point.
There's no indication of fully defined sketches or anything like that?
Yes, there are. It just like you would in SolidWorks, it goes black. So if I go back to this first sketch, so right now it's all blue, like we would normally see an underdefined sketch in SolidWorks. I just
Nothing in the tree.
What's that?
No minus symbol in the tree.
No indicators. Yeah, your tree has the design manager has very few indicators right now. Basically, you would just have to know that when you go, well, let me back up. Who's fully defining sketches these days? You fully defining sketches? Yeah, for what? I'm curious, for what? So you're using it for drawing creation. Okay, so I work more in the prototype world. We have built $2 million robots with no drawings. That's like the direction we're going. First of all, I can't trust my guys to make drawings right, so that's part of it. It's not like the way we want to be, but I find that a lot of people are getting away from fully defining sketches.
The reason is the next guy that comes behind you
Is going to blow it up.
and drags that sketch off, you're going to get a photo.
And that's what I want to hear. That's an acceptable response. If you're trying to prevent somebody else from damaging your stuff, then that's a reason to fully define sketches. But it's not a necessity. Because a lot of guys spend a lot of time fully defining sketches, and if no one's ever going to touch it again, like, why'd you do it?
Or somebody, only people touching at the.
They know better. Right, they know better, they're professionally. So I'm not saying don't fully define your sketches. That's the proper way to do it, but a lot of professionals out there just don't waste their time anymore. They use other things to control the features, or they put a note in there, don't touch this asshole, and you just go. Because it's time. Like, think about if you had a really complex sheet metal flat pattern, for example, with, I've been working with some big companies here. I'm trying to build the back end of a truck. It's going to take me a year to design the back end of this truck. Do I want to fully define 10,000 parts? Maybe not.
I got about 20,000 sheet metal parts on any given cooker.
Right? And you gotta, that's a lot of time, man.
A lot of wasted time.
So one thing I would suggest, we're getting off on a tangent now, but this is worth it. Have any of you used the fully defined sketch feature? Right. But if your intention is just to lock it down, that's one click. And
But that has no design, then you can't say, okay, I want to just adjust this and have everything follow it.
so what you're talking about is best practices for large companies. Most companies have 2 to 5 users. They just don't operate like that. It's not, I'm not saying it's right, and I know probably half the people in this building would shoot me listening to what I'm saying right now, but it's just the reality of what I see out there. I work with hundreds of companies that do SolidWorks stuff, over the past 10 years, and you've got 2 guys in a basement doing all the SolidWorks designs, and they've got a guy behind them screaming, and they're just go, go, go.
I mean, how are you going to do MVD then? You don't really define your features. I mean, that makes, MVD kind of difficult, right? Because now
Listen,
the bridge.
yes, no, I'm totally with you. I'm not saying this is the way to go. It's not the way to go. All I'm saying is there's a reality to it. And if you're fighting a battle of, I need a fully defined sketch versus I got to get this thing out the door, you're just going to get it out the door. But anyway, we can talk about that all after, and you guys can tell me how much of a psychopath I am.
Yeah, I wanted to see you define that one.
Yes, I'm going to do it. I'm just refreshing it. Lost connection to the server.
That would suck.
What's that?
Yeah, just continually spending 30 seconds. Okay, let's
Right, so...
go to the screen.
Right, so you got to have a good internet connection, not in like a basement in a conference, and you probably shouldn't be using a Surface Pro 3 anymore to run it either, because even Chrome chokes this thing out a little bit, so it's kind of not ideal. But anyway, so we were looking at that sketch. We'll go back. So my sketch that I started isn't here, right? We're not seeing it right there. So I'm going to go back to my collaborative space, and we're going to go down to the bottom. And we'll find physical part, whatever it is. So what is 1216, 12, we got to find the one from today. This is the thing that bothers me. Your internet needs to be very good, because here's what's happening right now. I was working on that sketch, right? That new sketch. It saved everything. I'm telling you, it saved everything. But what I'm waiting for right now is for it to come back from the SolidWorks Dassault servers in Waltham to come back to me. So that can take some time. Again, it's a new software, so you got to kind of take it with a grain of sand. But there's other highlights that we're going to see coming down the chute here. And actually, we'll speed this up a little bit. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about that right now. So I just want to back up 1 second and talk, feature tree. We talked about that, design manager versus the feature tree. They're very different. We've got all these different toolbars. We started looking at the sketch tab. the feature tab. You've got all your surfaces, like surface features like you had before. And you do have some assembly features. Even though it's not a traditional assembly, they know that you're going to want to treat things like assemblies. You're going to want to put mates in there. You're going to want to do patterns. You're going to want to mirror features. Somebody was asking about the wheelchair before. Like, I could mirror the wheel over, and like half the frame I mirrored over. I just basically built half and then mirrored the whole thing. All those features are in here. Tools tab, here you'll find, I would equate it to like our evaluate tab that we have right now, all your measure features, your weight features, any draft analysis you're gonna do if you wanna send it over. They've also got some tools for 3D printing. If you have a Cindo printer, it basically plugs like right into this software, and you can just hit go and it just goes right to the machine. They've got some collaboration between the two, but that's the only one I know that has that. Otherwise, you're just prepping your files to kick out to like whatever machine you're using. For the manage stuff, so I talked about the fact that you have version control. So this is where your version control lives in manage. There's only a couple buttons. Go back a version, go forward a version, edit some of the metadata, or here you can see the tree of the versions that you have, and this last button just creates a new version. You can create as many versions as you want. It's all on Dassault's cloud. You can do one every 10 minutes if you want and have that kind of history built in. It's not necessary, but you can do that, and you just go back and pull up the versions that you need. For viewing, very similar to everything we have in SOLIDWORks, right? Zoom all, zoom to that face, go normal to it. You can assign some colors. They're pretty limited right now, but you can drop in like JPEGs and stuff like that in the background if you want to do something specific, put a decal on something like that. They have some different backgrounds you can drop in as well. It's very similar to adjusting your scenes in SOLIDWORks. It's just not as advanced yet. I want to avoid this for now because I want to show you some videos of actual cool stuff. Okay, so this is the important one. How many of you guys know about design guidance right now? Nobody? Couple? Oh, okay. I'm like, God, they're really doing bad with the marketing if like none of you, we've been talking about it for a couple days. All right, so now I'm going to cheat a little bit and we're going to switch over. So I mentioned that I do LinkedIn Learning courses. So we're not even going to dare try to do design guidance live because it's obscene. Just to back up real quick, does anybody have any questions about like the features and stuff like that? I mean, it's very basic. No. Wait, I lied. There is. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, he told me it was coming. I just remember. He's like, yeah, we're putting the S key in, we're putting all the, yeah, it's in there. But I don't think you can customize this. Like, there's not the customization of the GUI like you have with SOLIDWORks where you could put whatever feature you want in there. It's just specific to where you are in the, what's that? I know, right? Seriously, they're moving fast upstairs. Like, geez, they got to slow down. Okay. I do want to spend like the last 15 minutes before you guys harass me with all my mistakes on design guidance, but does anybody else have questions about like basic features, the collaborative space, or just getting XDesign on the dashboard? Yeah.
I didn't spend a lot of time in XDesign, but if I remember correctly, I couldn't find a way to make like a helix coil or any kind of spiral.
Yeah, like a curve, a helix curve or something like that. Right now, as far as I know, they don't have that. They are, I was told though, because I asked specifically about the helix myself, I use that a lot for like mocking up threads or whatever else to do fits. It's all coming. Granted, I'm the guy up here saying, oh, it's all coming. It's all going to be here till, you know, when, but it's a development software right now, right? We're still in the Lighthouse program. They actually have a lot of these features already developed. They're just trying to slowly roll out like one feature at a time so they can get explicit feedback. Like, oh, we just did a new release, but only the extrude feature changed. We've got 20 other changes we want to push, but we're not trying to do it all at once so that they can actually just, like the first thing was the stability. That was the biggest thing that they've been fighting for the past 6 months. They rolled it out as a Lighthouse right after last SOLIDWORks World. It was very unstable. You can see I'm having some issues today, right? It's not great, but like compared to 6 months ago, oof, I couldn't do this presentation 6 months ago. wasn't going to happen. Like I would just be sitting here hitting F5 the whole time. But they've added a lot more bandwidth to their servers. They're growing it. I mean, it's literally a server room somewhere is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger to handle all this as they keep adding more features and more users and all of that. So that's part of the issue. I'm pretty sure these are all on their own dedicated servers, and the reason they're doing that is because of privacy issues, right? Like this has been a hot topic at SOLIDWORKS this year. Is like DoD, DOT, DOE. You do any of this government work, and you're working on the cloud, that's like they flip out. They're not going to do work with you. So they're securing their own servers as a way to say we've got this triple super secured. It's not accessible to anybody outside of the service. I don't know servers myself, so I can't speak to like the type of encryption or whatever, but that's their intention so far.
Yeah, I was thinking about that earlier, because it's all in the cloud, what about IP?
Right.
In the small print, are you signing anything away?
As far as I understand, I mean, I'm just top of my head because I've had to sign some NDAs and stuff like that to get access to the software, but anything you create on here is your property. Okay. If you put it in so if you got to pay attention to your 3D space that you're working in, okay? If you are working, let's go back, in the common space, everybody's there. Everybody can see your stuff. Don't work in the common space, okay? Because once somebody else sees it, you're done, right? It's like anything else. You put it on LinkedIn, it's gone. So you want to use these dedicated collaborative spaces, and you can make them yourself, create who gets access to them, all that stuff, what users get in. And like I said, it's all just funneled through Dassault. Questions? Any other questions for design guidance? Okay, features. Everybody's cool on features? I don't think I missed anything awesome in these. Nope. You can, like I mentioned, you can save. You can do a save as if you want to make a copy. But again, it's like, it's always saving. So it's there to make you feel good. They're probably just going to have a save as there at some point if you want to make copies or like a make copy button. I believe so. Yeah, like if you want to copy like a feature or something like you do in SOLIDWORKS, I'm pretty sure you can do that. It might not work awesome, but because like it builds the features differently. So like, whereas you might be used to grabbing a body and copy and pasting it, or grabbing like a sketch and copy and paste it, it might not always work the same. But like I've done, when I've started just doing 2D work, I've done copy paste and made copies of stuff all over, and it was cool.
Is there an export?
Yes, there is an export. I have to remember where it is actually. I gotta remember where it is. There is an export.
Would it be under share?
I don't know. It's not. I think I have to do it from here.
Well, can we move on with the presentation?
Yeah. We'll come back to this. Sorry about that. Yeah. All right. So design guidance. Does everybody know what design guidance is? Generative design. Has anybody heard of that? I'm getting some hands or no hands. That's how I can. Okay. So generative design is, I have a scenario. Okay. Let's say that I've got this water bottle and I want to make sure that I can run over it with my car because I'm crazy. All right. So you model up your water bottle inside of it. Inside of XDesign, you can apply some loads onto it, and then you can say, okay, I don't really know what the shape of this bottle should be yet. Maybe I just start with a brick of plastic and say, let's apply some loads. Let's make a cavity inside that'll hold the volume of water I want, and then let XDesign figure out what should the shape be. What shape do I need to handle the loads that I define? So if anybody's seen Desktop Metal's generative design product, it's very similar to that. I don't think it's quite as powerful yet. They have a very powerful generative design software. But you can see here in this example that I've got, we're basically making a stand. So you have to define some locations. So you basically model in where everything's going to connect. So I'm saying, okay, I'm going to have a couple feet, and I did various weird sizes just to kind of prove a point in this example. But But basically what you see here is the beginning result of the design guidance. So as we scroll through, what I've done is I've dictated loads at each one of these using the clamps and the load features down here. Then I went in and ran a new study, is what it's called, and this is the output that I get right here. So I'm kind of going in reverse, but basically you go into design guidance and say run this new design once you've designed all this stuff, and you can adjust like how much mass do I want in it? Do I want it to be really thick in certain areas? Do I want to make it more granular? Do I want to redesign it because I've changed my loading in some area? And then you can basically take this output, it'll give it to you as a solid body, and then you do what's called creating profiles, which will basically slice it. You say how many slices you want, and it gives you a sketch at every level. So you can model that part around that shape and have that ideal shape available to you. So here I'm just messing around with the various options just to show how it changes. You know, I've set a material as ABS because I'm going to print this out on a MakerBot or something like that. But it's pretty easy to use once you get into it. It takes a while because it's online, right? You're asking it to do simulation results. And when I say a while, I mean like minutes, not like an hour. Like you might wait 15, 10 minutes if it's something very complex, but the simple stuff takes like a minute. And it just runs. I've done some simple ones where like just 2 clamps on the side, downward load, takes like 30 seconds and it just runs through. So when we're in XDesign, so let's see if I can pull up this example that we were just looking at. Notice how I have 2 XDesigns open too? You can do that. All right, so this was one of the design guidance parts we did. So you basically start from left to right. If you want a specific surface not to move at all, you use what's called a clamp. So like this surface can't move. It's a hard extent of something. It's the corner of my bracket. It's whatever. It can't move. The earth is there, whatever. That's how you do that. So here what I said is these front faces cannot move. So I put a clamp on each one of those, and you just basically hit the clamp feature, go in and just select a face, and that's it. It's pretty easy. So that's the first step. Then I go over to my forces. What's nice about this is they've included a bunch of like typical forces that you can use. So when you click on force, I've got custom in there right now, but if you go to the drop down, force to press on a keyboard, soft push by hand, hard push by hand, average adult weight, human climbing stairs, a compact car. It's like, those are pretty sweet, just off the top of your head to have those in newtons. Like you'd be doing some math otherwise. Excuse me. So you can see here, this purple face in the middle is where I applied my force. So I applied it on the underside of that cylinder, and it's pushing down from that face. Okay, so once I did that, you can do pressure and torque as well. So in here, the design guidance is done by the design feature right here. So there's new design and redesign. So you can iterate this over and over and over again. So let's say I had some geometry out here that I wanted to change. I wanted to make those faces smaller, bigger, wider, rounder, whatever. You make those edits and then you say redesign, redo the design I've already done. And it's just basically reruns it. But if you're starting a new design, you just have to go through and set everything up. So the biggest thing is you set a volume. So it just comes in as a square typically, and you say whatever we're going to generate has to exist inside of this volume. And it's pretty easy to create. You just give it a few, like starting from the top down, regions to exclude. So like I told it, the face is on top, the face is on the side of the cylinder. I don't want them included in this shape. Like those just have to be free and empty. We don't want any part of the design to overlap and grab on top of those. You basically take this box, if I can scroll right, and you just grab the arrows and literally say like how big you want it to be and create your envelope. You tell it if you want any kind of symmetry. And then you see the results at the end. And this is the previous one that I ran before. So you can see that there. And then you can always add and remove material. So if you know that your material, your part has to weigh X amount of grams, you can literally set that right here and say, okay, we got to get it thinner, got to get it lighter, and just make that adjustment. When you're done, well, I'll get you in 1 second. When you're done with all of that, you've just got this form right now. It's not geometry that you can use. It's a representation. If you wanted, you can take that form and push it right to a 3D printer and print it out. So if you wanted to just literally get a blob and print it out really quick, you're there now. But if you want to do like actual refinement, make that geometry in there like you want it, you go over here to the Create Profiles. Just hit that button and it basically handles everything automatically for it. You just say, you know, how many slices, how granular do I want to go with creating these profiles, and then you can do like a sweep or a loft, pull them all together, do some extrusions, whatever it takes to get close to that original shape. So it's really not that complex. But like I said, it can take a little bit of time if you do like something that's going to require a lot of analysis. Like if you have various forces all over the place and many clamps, like it's just going to take longer, right? It's doing more simulation. But I think this one ran in about 5 minutes, I think. It took, I built it real quick, ran it, and then I was done, ready to go. Any questions on that? Oh yeah, sorry, you had a question before.
You changed the direction of the profiles from the Z-axis to the X or Y?
I believe, I think you have to do it when, actually, Divi, you're the man to ask. You can change. Okay. So you can, I'm just not sure how. I haven't done it yet. But I believe you have to change your orientation because that's what it's queuing to here, so you can. Okay, so yeah, if we like grab, oh, and you can do different profiles too. I forgot to mention that. So if you want like pure profiles of the geometry, it'll give you those polylines too if you want to do really, really wild stuff. But yeah, you can switch directions. There was another question. Yes?
How do you tell when it's internet lag or when it's thinking?
When you've become disconnected from the server, like I don't know if you noticed that, it tells you. It comes up with a red box. It's very obvious, and it says, you've lost connection, hit F5, we're going to reload you. When this is running, it'll have like a little status bar up there just saying like, we're running. When you're using the features, like you're sketching, extruding, all that stuff, it's pretty seamless. So it's not going to be like SolidWorks where you're getting like that white haze and it's waiting and it's processing in the background. It should just go like that. In my experience, it's either the feature just executes right away, or you get that warning that you've disconnected from the server and you just got to refresh. Other questions? Yeah.
Remember that this is completely web-based. What you're really doing is you are using a client to communicate to a server, right? So all the processing is really happening on the server, and there's this communication between that's happening. So when you see a message that you're disconnected, the computation is still there. All that has happened is that right now the communication is broken, and as soon as you press F5, that communication is reestablished.
So there's a couple things we kind of skipped over, but part of all of this, there's a few new things as well. There's the 3D Experience Marketplace. So you've designed your part, maybe you want to get it 3D printed. You can load it directly up on this website. You'll get 400 quotes in like a minute. Pretty awesome. Just scroll through, pick what you want. It's very easy. I'm not going to go through it right now. You literally just click on the Make Marketplace button and it'll take what you have on the screen. There's one little dialog comes up that says, are you ready? And it takes you to the browser. It just opens a new tab in your browser and it's right there. You select your options for what you want, various materials, what process you want to use, all that kind of stuff. And then it just literally gives you a list of vendors to choose from. So that's pretty cool if you're looking for sourcing. There's also part supply. So this works like, so when you guys download from McMaster-Carr and like fill your assemblies up, this is that for this. So you want to find all those bushings, bearings, parts, this, that. A lot of vendors are already on the platform. They've got all their models up there. They're very descriptive. Like there is a lot of information that comes with these parts, which was kind of surprising to me, like full spec with the part. So it's kind of cool, but you got to be using those kind of components. This is what it looks like when you get on there. It almost looks just like McMaster when you load it up a little bit, if you're used to doing that like I am. Just when you delve down into the specific parts, then you get that interface. They showed it in the preview today where it's like all of the spec information and the model preview and everything, and then the option to dump it in your current assembly. I don't think I spoke about the learning assistant. So when you're trying to do design guidance, if you're having any issues, this is similar to that help file. For the user assistant, it's the learning assistant. So this is for how to do various design guidance examples, and it literally just walks you through them. So it says, okay, we're going to do a design, we're going to make this, walk me through it, and it's pretty cool because it literally steps you through each part of the process and how to do it and what it looks like. So definitely use the Learning Assistant, and in the Tools tab, the User Assistant and the Learning Assistant. All the help's right there. So everything I messed up, that's where it's right. I think if I look back, that's most of the material I wanted to cover today to make sure you guys see everything. We'll just look right. Yeah, I think that's about it. Are there any other questions on XDesign? Remember, it's new. Have patience. It was a little rough when I started on it, but seriously, it's come a far way. When you get home and you're on a machine that's not my Surface Pro 3, I think you'll find it can click along a lot better. But have that good internet. Don't have like that weird, my cord's barely in kind of thing going on. Like, make sure you're plugged in because you need to keep that connection to the server. That's paramount for all this. Past that, like I said, join your local user group. Yes?
You know how they're going to market it? Is it going to be like a supplemental tool for SolidWorks? Or market it to SolidWorks users?
I think, Divi, you can maybe speak to that better than I can, but they're not really excluding anybody. They want everybody to join.
When you say market, you mean commercially or do you mean?
Well, or like, how will they package it? Like, are they going to offer us packaging?
It's available as an app on the 3D Experience platform. So when you buy XDesign, you essentially buy a role, and it's called XDesign as a role. So with that role, you get XDesign as an app, as well as additional apps, which are primarily catered around improving your core design experience. So you have 3D printing, you have 3D writer, file sharing, you have life cycle management, you have class management, and all the other things that you need as part of your design. You get all of those.
So it doesn't sound like I'd go to my manager and tell them I want SolidWorks and XDesign.
It depends. It depends on what you're doing.
So, if you are a SolidWorks user and you want to use platform, there's a different path by which you can reach the platform. Again, the XDesign is for people, for designers and engineers who want the flexibility of mobility, who want to be a little bit more flexible, who are mobile. In its current version, there are a whole lot of basic capabilities that you could use, but as it evolves, probably then, depending on what your work style and how you're working, you may want to choose one or the other. But I think desktop is there. You can always continue using desktop while kind of taking advantage of all the features that 3D Experience platform offers.
Like the anecdote I have is I literally have a scenario where I was in the back of a truck in Glasgow and I couldn't get my models at my workstation back home to do SolidWorks. If I just had it all on a web browser like this, like I was literally trying to order parts to save the job, and it was like a 12-hour ordeal because stuff was just not going well that day. But if I had everything with me just on a Chrome, like I could have basically done it with a Chromebook.
If I understand how it all works, like you're saying that the web browser, or the computer you're running on makes a difference, but
Well,
I don't think that makes any difference, does it?
I think you got to have something that can handle like running a couple instances of Chrome. Okay, I've got like a bunch of crap in the back. This computer's just shot, but you don't need a lot. You're not doing the performance here. Like Divi said, it's all happening back there. So that's like when I was talking about, I made that one file and then I had to refresh. So that file is out in SolidWorks land right now on their server, refreshing, and it's pushing it to my collaborative space. I just couldn't refresh it at that point because the connection was a little messed up. But it's all happening over there. You can literally just Chromebook it.
What kind of price point are we gonna be at?
No idea.
So when it's commercially available, we don't know the price point, but it's going to be announced. The commercial availability is going to be announced sometime in the future.
Something less
Yeah, probably, right? You'd think.
Will it say, after you do your work, can you save it as a SOLIDWORKS file and then pick up the work in SOLIDWORKS?
So I don't know if you've seen in the examples with the general sessions today and some others, but there is some interoperability, that's my word for the week, where basically you can push those files back and forth and have them exist in the, you can have a local file as our traditional SOLIDWORKS file, right? And then you can also have like parasolid versions of those. All of the XDesign stuff you can export as a step file. Sorry,
You can export a step also, but if you want to open it in SOLIDWORks, the native format is assembly XML format, and Field Interconnect is available now, so you could use that for update. But what David is talking about in the morning session, they were talking about making it more seamless.
right.
You can import, you can work over here, and it gets uploaded over there. It's much more. Right now it's like export, but then there is an item which tells you I need to update it, so you have to click that item. So you still have to take some steps. But Field Interconnect is supported for browsers, in SolidWorks and
Yeah, I think the big thing is going to be when we start getting the 3D interconnect thing going, because that's what bridges the gap for everything. You got to have that. And they're working on, making it a lot easier than it is now. Like if you were doing this stuff with PDM moving around, like I literally last night doing conceptual designs for a coworker. He's like, oh, I got it on PDM. And I'm like, that's great. The VPN sucks in the hotel internet. So I'm pulling everything down and I'm copying it on my machine. And later tonight, I'm going to copy it back on PDM and hope that you didn't have all the files checked out. And then it goes round and round like that. Like even with PDM, there's still a lot of that struggle. I think from what I've seen in 3D Interconnect, it'll be a lot more seamless where it's like stuff is just always updating. Got to have that internet connection, but it's updating. So yeah, appreciate you guys being patient with me today. Thank you. Like I said, join your user groups, get on the forums. If you go to mysolidworks.com, they've got more information about the Lighthouse program. It's still a Lighthouse, like Divi said, they're a ways away from commercialization. You can always feel free to reach out to me if you've got any questions, robots, swug, whatever. I've got a couple door prizes, I'll call them up here if any of you guys are interested who hung around. And my card is here, and have a good conference and have fun tonight. Be safe.